The pristine halls of Westbrook Academy always seemed to sparkle a little more whenever Madison Carter walked through them. Her Louboutin heels clicked against the marble floors like a metronome of superiority, each step a reminder to everyone else that she was the queen of this castle. I watched from behind my locker door, trying to make myself as invisible as possible, a skill I'd perfected over the past 2 years. "Hey, scholarship girl." Madison's voice rang out, and my heart sank. I should have known better than to think I could avoid her notice today. "Nice sweater. Did you get it from the dumpster behind Goodwill?" Her perfectly manicured hand reached out and plucked at the loose thread hanging from my sleeve. I fought the urge to pull away, knowing from experience that any reaction would only make things worse. The sweater had been my mother's, one of the few things I had left of her after she passed away last year. But Madison didn't need to know that. She didn't deserve to know that. Actually, I managed to keep my voice steady. It was my mom's. "Ah, how sweet," Madison cooed, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Hand-me-downs from mommy. Speaking of which, why don't we ever see your mom at school events?" "Oh wait, I forgot she's dead, isn't she?" The corridor fell silent. Even Madison's usual entourage seemed uncomfortable with this particular low blow. I felt my cheeks burn with a mixture of shame and anger, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I straightened my spine and met her gaze directly. "Yes, she is. And she taught me that my worth isn't determined by the price tag on my clothes or the size of my bank account." Madison's perfect features twisted into a sneer. "No, but it sure helps, doesn't it? Face it, Emma Foster, you don't belong here. Westbrook Academy is for the elite, not charity cases like you." As if on cue, the bell rang, saving me from having to respond. Madison flipped her golden hair over her shoulder and sashayed away, her followers trailing behind her like well-trained puppies. I waited until they were gone before letting out the breath I'd been holding. My best friend, Lucas Chen, appeared at my side, his face dark with concern. "One of these days, I'm going to hack into the school's system and change all her grades to Fs." I couldn't help but smile. Lucas was the only other scholarship student in our grade, and we bonded over our shared outsider status. "And risk losing your scholarship? Not worth it." "She's getting worse, Emma," he said, falling into step beside me as we headed to AP Economics. "You should report her to Principal Stevens." I shook my head. "Her family donated the entire west wing of the school. Who do you think they're going to side with, the scholarship student or the girl whose name is literally on the building?" Lucas couldn't argue with that logic. The Carter family was one of the wealthiest in the state, with their fingers in everything from real estate to technology. Madison's father, Richard Carter, was the CEO of Carter Industries, a Fortune 500 company that had been in their family for generations. As we settled into our seats in economics class, I tried to focus on Mr. Peterson's lecture about market dynamics and corporate mergers. But my mind kept wandering to the upcoming school charity gala this weekend. It was one of Westbrook's biggest events of the year, where the wealthy parents would gather to network and make donations while their children showed off their latest designer outfits. I hadn't planned on going; these events just served to highlight the vast gulf between my world and theirs. But Mr. Peterson had made attendance mandatory for his AP Economics students, saying it would be a good opportunity to observe real-world business networking in action. "Don't forget," Mr. Peterson called out as class ended, "I expect to see all of you at the gala on Saturday. And remember, you'll be writing a paper on the business connections and networking strategies you observe." I gathered my books, trying to ignore Madison's loud conversation with her friends about the custom-made Valentino dress she'd be wearing. My own outfit would be another of my mother's old dresses, carefully altered to fit me. At least it was classic black, hopefully plain enough to help me blend into the background. After school, I headed to my part-time job at Joe's Coffee Shop, a small cafe a few blocks from campus. It wasn't exactly prestigious work, but it helped pay for my textbooks and the occasional new piece of clothing. Plus, Joe was kind enough to let me study during slow periods. As I tied my apron and started my shift, I had no idea that this weekend's gala would change everything. I couldn't have known that in just a few days, the carefully constructed world of Madison Carter would be turned upside down and I would be at the center of it all. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out to find a text from my father. Big news. Need to talk when you get home tonight. I stared at the message, an odd feeling settling in my stomach. My father wasn't usually one for surprises or dramatic announcements. As a forensic accountant, he dealt in facts and figures, not suspense and mystery. Whatever this news was, it had to be important. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of coffee orders and studying for next week's calculus test. By the time I got home to our small apartment on the less fashionable side of town, it was already past 9. I found my father sitting at our tiny kitchen table, surrounded by papers and wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. He looked up when I entered, and for the first time in years, I saw something that looked like triumph in his eyes. "Emma," he said, gesturing for me to sit down. "There's something I need to tell you about your mother's family." The papers on the table, I would soon learn, held secrets that would shake the foundations of my world and Madison Carter's forever. But at that moment, standing in our modest kitchen with the sound of traffic floating up from the street below, I was still just the scholarship girl, the charity case, the girl who didn't belong. Little did I know, I belonged more than anyone could have imagined. "Your mother," my father began, his voice thick with emotion, "wasn't just a regular office worker like we told you. She was the heir to one of the largest technology companies in the country, Thomson Technologies." I felt the room spin slightly. Thomson Technologies was a household name, a tech giant that specialized in innovative software solutions. They were also, as everyone in the business world knew, one of Carter Industries' biggest business partners. "But, why didn't she ever tell me?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. My father's eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Your mother wanted you to have a normal childhood, away from the pressure and spotlight that came with the Thomson name. When she fell ill, she made me promise to keep it secret until you were old enough to handle it. And now." He pushed a thick envelope across the table. "Now it's time for you to know the truth about your inheritance, and about your role as the heir to Thomson Technologies." As I reached for the envelope with trembling hands, I couldn't help but think about Madison Carter's sneering face. If only she knew that the charity case she loved to torment was actually the heir to her family's most crucial business partnership. The gala this weekend was suddenly looking a lot more interesting. The Westbrook Academy annual charity gala was held at the prestigious Grand Plaza Hotel, where crystal chandeliers worth more than my entire apartment building hung from elaborately painted ceilings. I stood in front of the gilded mirrors in the ladies' room, hardly recognizing myself. My mother's black dress had been transformed by her old friend Maria, a seamstress who'd spent 3 nights modifying it to fit me perfectly. The classic A-line silhouette with its subtle beading along the neckline could have easily passed for designer if anyone had bothered to look closely enough. But more than the dress, it was the knowledge of who I really was that made me stand differently tonight. "Miss Foster." A hotel staff member appeared at my side. "Mr. Thomson would like to speak with you in the Platinum Suite." My heart skipped a beat. Jonathan Thomson, my maternal grandfather and the current CEO of Thomson Technologies, had arranged this meeting just hours before the gala. After my father's revelation 3 days ago, my world had become a whirlwind of secret meetings and crash courses in corporate history. As I followed the staff member through the hotel's exclusive upper floors, I could hear my father's words echoing in my head. "Your grandfather wants to announce your position as heir tonight, but he's giving you the choice. You can step into your role as a Thomson now, or we can wait until after graduation." The Platinum Suite's double doors opened to reveal a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, his silver hair and sharp blue eyes so much like my mother's striking an imposing figure against the Manhattan skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Emma," he said, his voice warm but carrying an undeniable authority. "You look so much like your mother." I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I mean, grandfather. He smiled, the stern lines of his face softening. I've waited 17 years to hear you call me that. He gestured to a leather armchair. Please, sit. We have much to discuss before the announcement. About that, I began, settling into the chair. I'm not sure if tonight is the right time. Maybe we should wait. Is this about the Carter girl? He asked, surprising me. At my startled look, he continued, yes, I know about the bullying. I have eyes and ears at Westbrook. You didn't think we'd let our heir attend school without any protection, did you? I felt my cheeks flush. You knew. All this time. Your mother made us promise not to interfere unless you were in real danger. She believed in letting you develop your own strength. He paused, studying me carefully. And she was right. You've grown into a remarkable young woman, Emma. The question is, are you ready to show the world who you really are? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas, 911. Madison's planning something nasty for your presentation. As part of the gala's program, each AP Economics student was supposed to give a brief presentation about a major business partnership. I'd been assigned Carter Industries and Thompson Technologies, an irony that now seemed almost comical. I have to go, I said, standing quickly. Madison Carter is planning to humiliate you during your presentation. My grandfather finished, raising an eyebrow. Yes, I heard about that too. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I looked at him, suddenly understanding. This wasn't just about announcing my identity, it was about how I chose to step into my power. Would I let Madison's petty schemes define this moment, or would I take control of my own narrative? Actually, I said slowly, a plan forming in my mind, I think I know exactly what to do. But I'll need your help. 20 minutes later, I stood at the podium in the grand ballroom, facing a sea of influential faces. Madison sat in the front row, wearing her promised Valentino dress and a smirk that suggested she was ready for whatever scheme she'd planned. Good evening, I began, my voice steady. I'm here to discuss one of the most successful business partnerships in the tech industry, the alliance between Carter Industries and Thompson Technologies. I could see Richard Carter, Madison's father, paying polite attention. Beside him, his wife Catherine maintained her usual expression of bored superiority. Madison was already reaching for her phone, no doubt ready to launch whatever social media attack she'd prepared. This partnership began 25 years ago, I continued, clicking to the next slide, when Jonathan Thompson and Richard Carter Sr. recognized that their company's strengths could complement each other perfectly. But what many people don't know is that this partnership was nearly lost 2 years ago. The room stirred. This wasn't part of the official company history, this was insider information that only someone with deep knowledge of both companies would know. I saw Richard Carter sit up straighter, his expression sharpening. In 2022, Thompson Technologies developed a revolutionary AI algorithm that could have put them years ahead of the competition. They could have dissolved the partnership with Carter Industries and dominated the market alone. But Sarah Thompson, the heir to Thompson Technologies, believed in the power of loyalty in partnership over short-term gains. My voice softened as I mentioned my mother's name. Sarah Thompson died last year, never publicly acknowledged as the person who saved this crucial partnership. She chose to work behind the scenes, believing that true leadership isn't about recognition, but about doing what's right. Madison's phone was forgotten in her lap as she stared at me, confusion evident on her face. Her father, however, had gone pale. He remembered Sarah Thompson and now he was looking at me with dawning recognition. Sarah Thompson was my mother, I said, my voice clear and strong. And as her daughter and the heir to Thompson Technologies, I stand here tonight to say that I believe in the same principles she did. Power isn't about domination or humiliation. It's about responsibility, partnership, and lifting others up rather than pushing them down. The silence in the room was absolute. Madison's face had gone from confused to shocked to mortified in the span of seconds. Her father looked like he might faint. And from the back of the room, I saw my grandfather give me an approving nod. I look forward to working with the next generation of Carter Industries leadership, I concluded, looking directly at Madison, and I hope we can build a partnership based on mutual respect rather than intimidation. The applause that followed was thunderous, but I barely heard it. I was watching Madison, who sat frozen in her chair, her carefully crafted world crumbling around her. The phone in her lap, the one she'd planned to use to humiliate me, slipped and clattered to the floor, unnoticed. As I stepped down from the podium, Lucas appeared at my side, grinning from ear to ear. That, he whispered, was the most badass thing I've ever seen. But the night was far from over. As I made my way through the crowd of suddenly very interested business leaders and their families, I caught sight of Madison slipping out onto the hotel's terrace. Despite everything, something in her expression made me pause. I had imagined this moment of triumph for days, but now that it was here, it felt hollow. I remembered what my mother had taught me about true strength, about lifting others up. With a deep breath, I turned and followed Madison out into the night. The real test of my character wasn't in how I'd handled my rise to power, it would be in how I handled what came next. The terrace of the Grand Plaza Hotel offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, but Madison Carter wasn't admiring the view. She stood at the marble balustrade, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles had turned white. In the soft lighting from the garden lanterns, I could see tears threatening to spill from her eyes. I hesitated at the threshold. This was the girl who had tormented me for 2 years, who had mocked my mother's death, who had planned to humiliate me tonight. I had every right to walk away and let her deal with the consequences of her actions alone. But something made me step forward. Madison. She stiffened at the sound of my voice but didn't turn around. Come to gloat, Emma. Or should I say, Miss Thompson. There was bitterness in her voice, but also something else, fear. Shame. I moved to stand beside her, maintaining a careful distance. Actually, I came to make sure you're okay. That got her attention. She turned to face me, mascara slightly smudged around her eyes. Why do you even care? I've been horrible to you. I literally had a whole social media campaign ready to destroy you tonight. I know, I said quietly. Lucas found out about it. That's partly why I decided to make the announcement tonight. Madison let out a hollow laugh. God, I'm such a cliché. The mean rich girl who bullies others to feel better about herself. And now it turns out you were richer and more powerful than me the whole time. She shook her head. My father is probably having a stroke right now, thinking about all the damage I've done to our company's relationship. Is that what you're worried about? The business partnership? Shouldn't I be? That's all anyone ever cares about in our world, isn't it? Connections, partnerships, networking. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you know why I was especially awful to you this past year? I shook my head, genuinely curious. Because you were everything I couldn't be. You were smart without trying to show off, kind without expecting anything in return, and strong without needing to put others down. Even when I was at my worst, you never broke. And I hated you for it. The confession hung in the air between us. Inside, the gala continued, the muffled sound of classical music and polite laughter floating through the glass doors. My mother, Madison continued, her voice barely above a whisper, she's been having an affair with her tennis instructor for the past year. Everyone in our social circle knows, but they all pretend not to notice. My father buries himself in work and pretends everything's fine. And I just kept trying to maintain this perfect image, this illusion of control. I felt a sudden shift in my perspective. The Madison I'd known, the cruel queen bee, the untouchable princess, was just as much a mask as my role as the poor scholarship student had been. You know what's ironic? I said, leaning against the railing. All those times you made fun of me for being poor, for wearing my mom's old clothes. I wore them because they made me feel close to her. They were real, just like your pain is real. Madison looked at me with surprise. How are you being nice to me right now? If I were you, I'd be destroying me on social media already. Maybe because I understand what it's like to wear a mask. To hide who you really are. I turned to face her fully. But I learned something from my mom before she died. She taught me that true strength isn't about having power over others, it's about having the power to lift others up, even when they've hurt you. A tear finally escaped and rolled down Madison's cheek. Your mom sounds like she was amazing. She was. And you know what else? She actually knew your mom in college. They were friends before our family's companies even started working together. Madison's eyes widened. What? My mom never mentioned that. There's a lot our parents never mentioned, I said with a slight smile. Maybe it's time we stopped letting their secrets and our assumptions define who we are to each other. Just then, the terrace doors opened, and Richard Carter stepped out. His face was a mask of barely controlled panic. Madison, there you are. We need to. He stopped short when he saw me. Miss Thompson. I hope Madison hasn't. Actually, Mr. Carter, I interrupted smoothly. Madison and I were just discussing some ideas for a joint project between our company's youth leadership programs. She has some really innovative thoughts about combining Carter Industries' market experience with Thomson Technologies' AI capabilities. Madison looked at me in surprise, but quickly caught on. Yes, Emma and I think there's a huge opportunity for collaboration. Mr. Carter's relief was palpable. That's wonderful. I'll make sure to mention this to Jonathan right away. After he hurried back inside, Madison turned to me with questioning eyes. Why did you do that? Because maybe it's time for both of us to stop pretending to be who everyone expects us to be, and start being who we actually are. I held out my hand. What do you say? Want to try being real together? Madison looked at my offered hand for a long moment. Then, with a genuine smile, the first I'd ever seen from her, she took it. I'd like that. As we walked back into the gala together, I could feel the surprised stares of our classmates and the speculative glances of the adults. But for the first time, neither of us was performing for their benefit. You know, Madison said as we approached the refreshment table where Lucas stood with his mouth hanging open at the sight of us together, I really did have a spectacular takedown planned for tonight. I had this whole presentation about how you were a fraud and a social climber. I couldn't help but laugh. Want to tell me about it over coffee sometime? I hear Joe's coffee shop has great lattes. Madison's eyes sparkled with amusement. The place where you work. God, you really are going to make me eat humble pie, aren't you? Think of it as a trust-building exercise, I grinned. Besides, you haven't lived until you've tried my caramel macchiato. As we joined Lucas, who was still staring at us like we'd both grown second heads, I realized that this night had turned out nothing like I'd expected. Instead of a triumph of revenge, it had become something far more valuable, a chance for both of us to break free from the roles we'd been playing. But as I would soon learn, not everyone was ready for this dramatic change in the social order. And some secrets, once revealed, have consequences that none of us could have predicted. The Monday after the gala, Westbrook Academy was buzzing with whispers. The story of my true identity had spread like wildfire through social media, transforming me overnight from the scholarship charity case to the Thomson Technologies heiress. But the bigger shock for most people was seeing Madison Carter and me walking into school together, chatting like old friends. I still can't believe you actually came to work with me yesterday, I said as we headed to our lockers. Madison had shown up at Joe's coffee shop on Sunday, ordered a caramel macchiato, and spent 3 hours helping me study for our upcoming economics test. Well, someone had to save your customers from your terrible latte art, Madison teased, adjusting her Gucci bag. Though I have to admit, that caramel macchiato was pretty amazing. Lucas fell into step beside us, still looking slightly shell-shocked by our newfound friendship. This is weird, right? I'm not the only one who thinks this is weird. Totally weird, Madison agreed cheerfully. But honestly, it's kind of nice not having to be perfect all the time. As we rounded the corner to our lockers, we found Catherine Carter, Madison's mother, waiting there. Her tennis outfit and perfectly maintained appearance couldn't quite hide the tension in her face. "Madison, darling," she said, her voice sharp despite the endearment. "We need to talk. Privately." Madison's smile faltered. "Mom. What are you doing here?" "Damage control," Catherine replied, casting a cold glance in my direction. "The board of directors is meeting this afternoon, and your father's position as CEO is being questioned. Apparently, some people feel that his inability to control his own daughter's behavior reflects poorly on his leadership capabilities." The color drained from Madison's face. I stepped forward instinctively, but Catherine held up a manicured hand to stop me. "Miss Thompson, or should I say, Miss Foster? I think you've done quite enough already. Madison, come with me. Now." As Madison followed her mother down the hall, she glanced back at me with an expression that made my heart ache. I started to follow, but Lucas caught my arm. Wait. Look at this." He held up his phone, showing me a breaking news article. Thompson Technologies Heir revealed, questions arise about Sarah Thompson's death. My blood ran cold as I scanned the article. Someone had leaked details about my mother's last days, private details that suggested her death might not have been from natural causes as everyone had believed. The timing of Sarah Thompson's death, the article read, just weeks before a crucial vote on the Carter-Thompson merger, has raised questions among industry insiders. Sources close to the family suggest that Sarah Thompson had been planning to vote against the merger, which would have effectively ended the decades-long partnership between the two companies. "This is impossible," I whispered, but even as I said it, memories began to surface. My mother's increasing anxiety in her final weeks. The mysterious meetings. The way she'd made my father promise to keep our identity secret until the right time. My phone buzzed with a text from my grandfather, my office. "Now. There's something you need to know." "I have to go," I told Lucas, my mind racing. "Can you keep an eye on Madison?" "Yeah, of course." He squeezed my shoulder. "Be careful, Em. This is starting to feel bigger than just high school drama." The ride to Thompson Technologies headquarters was a blur. Security whisked me through a private entrance and up to the executive floor, where I found my grandfather looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I had hoped to protect you from this," he said as soon as I entered his office. "Your mother wanted you to have a normal life, to make your own choices. But it seems the past has caught up with us. Is it true?" I asked, my voice shaking. "About Mom planning to vote against the merger?" He nodded slowly. "Sarah discovered something in the weeks before her death. Irregularities in the merger documentation. Money being moved through shell companies. She believed someone was trying to use the merger to hide years of systematic fraud. The Carters? We were never able to prove anything. The documents your mother had gathered disappeared after her death. The official investigation ruled it natural causes, a tragic complication of her illness." He paused, his eyes fixed on a photo of my mother on his desk. But I never believed it. My phone buzzed again, a text from Madison, "Meet me at Joe's. Emergency. Don't tell anyone." "There's more," my grandfather continued. "The person who leaked the story about your mother. It was Catherine Carter." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "Madison's mom? But why now?" "Because she's desperate. The fraud your mother uncovered. It leads back to her, not Richard. She's been embezzling from both companies for years, using the merger negotiations as cover. Your mother figured it out, and now Now I'm in a position to expose everything, I finished, the pieces falling into place. And she's trying to discredit me before I can. Emma, you need to be careful. Catherine Carter is a dangerous woman. She's already shown she's willing to go to extreme lengths to protect herself. My phone buzzed insistently with another message from Madison, please. I found something. Something about your mom. I looked at my grandfather, then at my phone, then back at him. I have to go. Emma, wait. I know it's dangerous. But Madison isn't her mother. And if there's any chance she knows something about what happened to Mom. I headed for the door. Sometimes you have to trust someone despite the risk. Like mother, like daughter, my grandfather sighed. Sarah would have done the same thing. He pressed a button on his desk. I'm sending security with you. At least let me do that much. As I rushed out of the building and headed toward Joe's coffee shop, my mind was racing. Had Madison discovered her mother's involvement in my mother's death? Was this a trap? Or was it something else entirely? Whatever the truth was, I knew one thing for certain: by the end of today, nothing would ever be the same. Joe's coffee shop was eerily quiet when I arrived. The "closed" sign hung on the door, but through the window, I could see Madison sitting alone at a corner table, her fingers nervously tapping against a manila envelope. The Thompson security team positioned themselves discreetly around the building as I used my key to enter. The bell above the door chimed softly, causing Madison to jump. Emma, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. For what? I asked, slowly approaching her table. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, I could see that she'd been crying. I found these in my mom's home office this morning. She pushed the envelope toward me. After what she said at school, I got suspicious. She's been acting strange ever since the gala, making phone calls in the middle of the night, shredding documents. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were photos, emails, and handwritten notes, a paper trail that told a story more terrible than I could have imagined. She killed her, Madison whispered, her voice breaking. My mother killed your mother. The documents revealed everything. Catherine Carter had been embezzling money from both companies for years, using elaborate schemes to hide the fraud. Sarah Thompson had discovered the truth and was planning to expose everything, not just to stop the merger, but to protect both companies from Catherine's systematic theft. There's more, Madison continued, pulling out her phone. I recorded a conversation between my mom and her tennis instructor this morning. He's not really a tennis instructor, he's a fixer she hired to help cover up her crimes. She pressed play, and Catherine Carter's voice filled the quiet coffee shop. The Thompson girl is becoming a problem, just like her mother. No, we need something more permanent this time. Make it look like an accident, just like before. My blood ran cold. She's planning to kill you. Catherine's voice came from the doorway. Well, unfortunately, that plan's just been slightly accelerated. We both spun around. Catherine Carter stood there, looking immaculate as always, but her eyes were wild. Behind her was a man I recognized from society photos as her supposed tennis instructor, his hand concealed beneath his jacket. Mom, don't, Madison pleaded, stepping in front of me. It's over. I've already sent copies of everything to the police. My own daughter, Catherine laughed bitterly. Betraying me for the girl she used to torment. How poetic. It's not betrayal, Madison said firmly. It's finally doing the right thing. Something you taught me never to care about. The right thing. Catherine spat. I did everything for you. Every penny I took was to secure your future, to make sure you stayed at the top where you belong. And this is how you repay me. By not becoming a murderer like you. Madison's voice was steady now. Yeah, I'd say that's repayment enough. The man beside Catherine began to move, but before he could act, the coffee shop's doors burst open. Thompson security flooded in, followed by FBI agents who had been waiting outside. In seconds, Catherine and her accomplice were in handcuffs. "We got her confession on audio," an FBI agent told me later. "Between that, the documents, and Madison's testimony, she'll be going away for a very long time." The next few weeks were a blur of headlines, court appearances, and corporate restructuring. Richard Carter stepped down as CEO, but thanks to Madison's actions in helping expose the truth, the board appointed him to an advisory position instead of removing him completely. Madison moved in with her aunt in New York, while her father focused on rebuilding both their family and the company's reputation. The Carter-Thompson partnership survived, but with new leadership and stronger oversight. 1 month after everything happened, Madison and I sat in our usual spot at Joe's coffee shop. The morning rush had ended, and we were supposed to be studying for finals, but instead found ourselves talking about everything that had changed. "You know what's weird?" Madison said, stirring her caramel macchiato, which she now claimed was the best in the city. "A part of me always knew something was wrong with my mom. The way she pushed me to be perfect, to maintain our image at any cost. I think I took it out on you because you represented everything she taught me to hate: authenticity, kindness, integrity." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm learning that real strength isn't about power or status or being perfect. It's about having the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it hurts." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your mom taught you that. I wish I could have known her." "Me too," I said softly. "But you know what? I think she would have been proud of both of us. We broke the cycle. We chose truth over appearance, friendship over rivalry. From enemies to best friends," Madison laughed. "Who would have thought?" Speaking of friendship, Lucas called from behind the counter, where he was attempting to make latte art. "If you two are done with your heart-to-heart, we have that Thompson Carter Youth Leadership Program proposal to finish." The program had been our idea, a joint initiative between our family's companies to mentor underprivileged students interested in business and technology. It felt like the perfect way to honor my mother's memory and create something positive from all the pain. As I looked around at my best friends, the former school queen who had become like a sister to me, and the fellow scholarship kid who had stood by me through everything, I couldn't help but smile. My mother had always said that true wealth wasn't about money or power, but about the people you choose to surround yourself with and the good you choose to do in the world. The bell above the door chimed as my father and grandfather walked in, followed by Richard Carter. They had a weekly coffee meeting now, working to rebuild not just their business relationship, but their personal ones as well. "Hey, Dad," Madison called out. "Emma finally admitted that my latte art is better than hers." "Did not," I protested, laughing. As the adults joined us, ordering their usual drinks and joining in our conversation, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The past year had brought more drama, pain, and revelation than I could have ever imagined, but it had also brought healing, truth, and real connections. I thought about all the masks we wear: the poor scholarship student, the mean rich girl, the perfect society wife, the ruthless business leader. But in the end, it's who we are beneath those masks that truly matters. Sometimes it takes losing everything you thought you wanted to find what you really need. Madison caught my eye and smiled, both of us thinking the same thing. We had started as bitter enemies, brought together by tragedy and truth, only to discover that the greatest wealth of all was the authenticity we had found in each other.